Welcome to this episode of Hardman Talks. I'm Larissa Adams and I'm part of the Investor Communications and Marketing team here at Hardman. I'm delighted to be joined here by our guest today, Peter Winders, founder and director at Henwick Park Distribution. Peter, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we're here today to talk about the value of marketing and distribution for asset managers. The focus of this is to understand how asset managers can build their funds from the power and the leverage of industry relationships and marketing through intermediary channels, and to really hear your voice and advice, Peter, on what you think are the most valuable industry marketing strategies for asset managers today. So I think before we dive into that and hear your industry thoughts, can you give us a quick background on yourself and the work that you do at Henwick Park?
Sure, thank you very much indeed. I know it's hard to believe, but myself and fellow two directors have over 100 years experience in the sales and marketing of investment products in one way, shape or form. And for myself, I started out with Legal & General, where I was there for around about 20 years. Then I moved on to a company called Matheson, which is part of the Matheson, Jardine Matheson empire. And I was there running their unit trust company for approximately 3 years. And then after that, I was with Saracen, Bank Saracen, followed by Scottish Equitable. And then I had a spell at American Phoenix, which was a US company, which at the time owned about 30% of Aberdeen. Then I went on to a company called EEA, where I was there for about 5 years and managed to increase their funds under management from $15 million in year one. And when I left, we'd grown it to over $1 billion. So that was a really good learning curve for me in the fund management industry. And then eventually 8 years ago, we set up Henwick Park. And what we do at Henwick Park is really quite simple. We help fund management companies with distribution of their product, or we help other entities to raise money. If I may, to put it crudely, we often compare ourselves to a high-class dating agency, which is where we put the buyers and the sellers together and help them with their business relationship. No rocket science, very simple. We've been in this business for many, many years, as I indicated earlier on. And what we bring to the party is knowing a lot of people and being able to introduce our fund management clients to professional intermediaries. We don't deal with any retail investors at all. We're a simple B2B business.
What are some of the key issues asset managers face, and when it comes to marketing and distribution and growing their AUM?
I mean, firstly, it's a very crowded market. There's a lot of people vying to do business. So from a fund manager's point of view, they really have to differentiate themselves, and they need to have a proposition that's clear and easy to understand. And they also have to have a product that's, they need to know the market they're selling into. And I guess one of the strap lines we have, and in fact, it's the opening line we have on our website, even if you have the best fund in the world, unless the right people know about it, you're unlikely to be successful. So that's really, the sort of challenges that, that we have in the fund management industry. And that's the core of our thinking and the way we address it and the way we help fund managers to meet the right people who can do business with them. Simple as that. In the UK, we have connections with somewhere around about 5,000, professional intermediaries. And by that, I mean, financial advisors, wealth managers, family offices, and people like that. And overseas, we have even more connections, probably about 5,500. In fact, everywhere around the world, the only exception being the US, because of the SEC and the regulations within the US.
Yeah, I think it just, for asset managers, it really boils down to proper communication and awareness of their
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's excellent. And I mean, what are the benefits of leveraging off industry relationships and marketing through intermediary channels?
Firstly, the intermediary channel is clearly the way that most fund management groups want to go. They ultimately, of course, want to get to the end investor. And the best way to do that is obviously through an intermediary who has as his clients those people that would invest within their product. So the intermediary channel is really the most important way, I think, for most fund management groups to get into the market and obviously build up funds under management. And once as a fund management company you're growing, then it opens up other markets, which could be things like pension funds or institutional investors and family offices.
Makes sense, and it opens up that access for them.
Yes,
so,
very much.
Exactly. So if you're pulling it all together, what are your top tips, I guess, for asset managers looking to grow their AUM?
What we've noticed in recent years, particularly recently when you've got Brexit, one of the main factors really, I think that fund managers need to know exactly who they're going after, who they want to sell their products to. And so one of the most important things, I think, is to have the correct structure. You've got to be pretty sure where you want to be domiciled. And also different domiciles have different rules, they have different fund sizes and different types of structure. So the most important tip is to be in the right place so that you can promote your product to the right type of people. You've got to put yourself in the position of the person you're selling to, in other words, the intermediary. And you've got to think, what do they want to hear from me? And what message do they want? So you've probably got to be very clear and concise how you put it across. Just think of yourself as an independent advisor. What does he want to hear from you? Why should he buy your fund? What's different about your fund? And, you've got to be aware of the market trends. There's no point in promoting something that perhaps is not in favor at that moment in time. As I'm sure the audience are aware, there's a lot of discussion and talk about bonds and indeed bond funds. You've got to be aware of what the market is thinking about, what has appeal. And, as a positive, people are thinking very strongly about ESG things in terms of funds. Know your market, understand the market, have the correct structure for your market, and tell the people why you're the best.
Okay, I'm going to throw a slight curveball here because it's really difficult to have a conversation about marketing and not mention social media or any of the new media channels that are being used today.
Sure.
Do you think asset managers are making full use of social media in the UK? And what are your thoughts around this conversation? How do you think that they could possibly use it better?
Social media is important, but it's not quite as important as it might be from an intermediary to his clients. So I think possibly more use could be made of social media. But you've got to be very careful, I think, when you're dealing as a fund manager to an intermediary, not to overburden them, because intermediaries get bombarded left, right, and centre, by fund management groups. So it's probably better to say less, but when you say something, it's more meaningful. I think we find the use of short videos an interesting development in the market now, and that's been seen quite recently, and indeed even yourselves have done one recently, and I think that's a brilliant way of getting to the market. A short video for 2 or 3 minutes is worth a lot.
So on the other side of the coin, for financial advisory firms, what have you been seeing in the industry? What are some of the key concerns from IFAs, and how is the meeting in the middle with fund managers resolved through intermediary channels?
A lot of intermediaries are sticking to what they know, and by that I mean existing fund managers. And the challenge we have and new fund managers have is to persuade the intermediary market that there really are other options out there and they are worth looking at. And I understand that from an intermediary's point of view, they've got to keep an eye on risk, reward, and all the other issues that come into it. But there really are some interesting players out there. And clearly what we're trying to do is to help promote a lot of those new players in the market to have an audience with the intermediary. But there are a number of good managers out there. and there are a number of good services such as yourselves, who can help, these people make their mark in the marketplace. It's as simple as that. Clearly, there's a lot of other issues going on with the intermediary market at the moment, and I won't by any means touch on all of them. But, there is a distinct movement at the moment looking at ESG. That really is very strong in the marketplace at the moment and is really gathering strength. And I think companies are going to have to be thinking more about that in the future if they want to get business from the intermediary market. Clearly, the COVID issue is something that is affecting all of us. The view seems to be at the moment from the intermediary point of view, keep things safe, go the way you know. Watch out, you've got PI insurance and you've got the regulators being more active these days, which means that you're going to go the old tried and tested routes. But I guess my message is that there are other routes as well. And, there is a lot of activity in the DFM market and model portfolios, a whole host of considerations here. And they all have to be thought about.
Completely agree, especially with what you were saying about ESG. It's something that funds just can't ignore. It has to be front and center of their policy.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's become very, I was about to use the word serious, but I don't mean it quite in that context. But an interesting example is what's happening in Luxembourg at the moment. If any fund wants to claim, that they adhere to ESG type criteria, they have to prove it, and they get rated. They get different ratings. And if the regulator finds out that they're not following the ESG rules, then the directors can be liable to not just a fine, but also imprisonment. So that is a very strong way of enforcing ESG principles. And,
It is getting serious. I don't think you're exaggerating.
No.
With that in mind.
No, I wouldn't want to be sitting in a jail cell working out what to do over a portfolio. It doesn't work. But anyway, yes.
Okay, so let's wrap this up with one last question. So, where does Henwick Park fit into all of this? And just expand on maybe the working relationship that you have with ourselves, with Hardman, and your key services and what people can look out for.
Our core offering as a company is to help fund managers and introduce them to new sources of business through the professional intermediary market, be that in the UK or indeed overseas. And it's all very well us explaining about the fund manager, introducing the fund manager, and the fund manager making his pitch. But at the end of the day, if the intermediary actually likes the proposition and wants to invest in it, he's then got to go away and do all of his due diligence, which can take a long, long time. And we found working with Hardman a great advantage in promoting a fund, because with a Hardman independent research report on the fund, the company, who's behind it, do they really do what they say, and all that sort of thing, we find a Hardman report really helpful because it does 90% of the due diligence for that intermediary. So for us, it's a wonderful working relationship, being able to go out, talk about a fund, talk about a company, and then say, by the way, don't take our word for it. Here's an independent third-party report, about the fund. And it makes the whole process of sales and marketing that much simpler for all parties involved. We've got involved in quite a number of areas, that are allied to fundraising and fund marketing. We've just talked about, the relationship and what we do with Hardman. But, equally, we have connections with various administration houses. And if somebody's just in the process of setting up a fund or moving domicile or something like that, we can help introduce that fund manager to an administration house who can set up a fund for him to sell his product. And we also, as a side shoot, get involved a lot in the EIS situation, and whether it's single company EISs or portfolio of EISs. One of the last points I really want to make is that whatever and whoever comes to us, they're coming to us and we're promoting them because not only because they genuinely believe in their product, it's also we have to be careful what we take out to our connections, but more importantly, the way we charge for our services. We charge a monthly fee so that we can dedicate ourselves to the client, and we also have an allied success fee. And that means that anybody coming to us who we work with wouldn't be spending money with us unless they thought, what they had was genuinely of interest to the market. Why else would you spend money to get to the market unless you've got the product that will do particularly well in that market? We're kind of the in-betweener, if you like, bringing the buyers and sellers together. Simple as that. Very easy to understand, not rocket science. And there you go.
Thank you, Peter. No, thanks for your answers. It's been great. It's been a pleasure chatting to you.
Likewise. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you.
And to our viewers, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your time. We'll see you back here on Hardman Talks next time. Thanks.